Chuck, how's it going?
Steve, what's up, man? Another week in the books.
Yeah,
We got a beast week.
yeah, a
Excited.
lot of good tournaments this week, so a lot to talk about. But first off, we're going to talk about quote unquote feast week and all the tournaments that go on with that. We'll start off with the players era. Maybe you could give us a few thoughts on what you're looking forward to there.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a new tournament. Obviously, you have the Maui, the Bahamas tournament, stuff like that. But this is obviously a new tournament within the NIL era. And for people that don't have too much of a background, me and Steve were just talking about a lot of high major teams. I don't know how many ranked teams there are, but close to like 10 to I don't know, a lot of ranked teams as
Yeah,
well. Um, but this tournament involves money. So obviously with the NIL growing, obviously, teams and players are obviously now to get branded and stuff like that. The players era allows teams to make a great amount of money, and then at the end of it, they play each other, play like two games, I think, right, Steve, and
yep,
then play a championship game as well. So it's gonna be great. I think it'll be high level talent. Going to see a lot of great guards, a lot of great bigs. So I'm excited for it, honestly.
yeah. I'm actually, as we speak, I want to look up the prize amount. I think it's 4 million. I think it's 4 million if they win.
For the winner,
Yeah, yeah.
woman, and then they have to like distribute that throughout however they do throughout the team, right?
Yeah, I think so. If you win, I think it's if you the winner gets 4 million. I think second and third might get another prize. I'm not 100% sure, but it's huge for these schools to get that money because a lot of these schools for their NIL money, they have to like privately fund it, like raise
hmm
money for it.
hmm
So getting that 4 million goes a long way as we, hear all throughout the year. Like Kentucky, for example, last year spent $22 million on a
hmm
roster, so
Right.
it definitely adds up for sure.
No, it's gonna be great. I mean, I think every team that participates in it as well gets at least some type of money.
I think so. It's just again, I think if you come in a higher quote unquote place, you get way more, especially
Yeah.
the winner.
But yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a lot of high level teams. Bama, St. John's, and Iowa State play tomorrow. We'll cover that in our different pick segment, which we'll get to. But yeah, I mean, I'm obviously, the Maui tournament, Bahamas, those are like nostalgic, watching those teams go at it back in the day. But I think it's a whole new time now where, wherever the money is, and it's in the States, it's in Las Vegas, it's in
Yeah.
New York, you know what I'm saying? A lot of
And
these
I,
people are playing these games out here now, so
I was reading yesterday actually they're going to expand it, I believe, next year to 32 teams. So right now I think it's 18, and
which
then
is
they're going to 32. I know Louisville, for example, they just agreed to play in the tournament and
mhm,
whatnot.
mhm.
And I mean, it's kind of a no doubt. Like as much as the Maui and the Bahamas tournament are great, you're playing against quote unquote quality opponents. But now in this NIL era, like who wouldn't want to be in a tournament like that?
Yeah.
And you're also playing great teams as well,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of a no doubter.
Yeah, I just want to highlight these teams that are in the tournament. Obviously, you have Tennessee, Rutgers, St. John's, Iowa State, Syracuse, Houston, Auburn, Oregon, Gonzaga, Bama, Michigan, San Diego State. Uh, like you can't really beat these teams. Like these are like just high level teams. Maryland, UNLV. So it's tough. It's tough, obviously, for these other tournaments. The Maui and stuff like that to kind of compete where like the money's here. So wherever the money is, whether it's teams, coaches, players, uh, generalship, the people are going to follow that. So, but I think it should be great.
Out of those teams, Chuck, who maybe is a team we haven't really talked about as much as others, that you're kind of looking forward to seeing for maybe the
Um,
first time or maybe a second time?
yeah, yeah. So a team that I've seen a little bit already, and I was seeing them a lot last year was Iowa State. They're 4-0 right now. They're ranked 16th, and they have a pretty experienced roster coming back. Obviously, their point guard, Limpsey. I'm saying the right
Yep,
team.
Lipsy, yep.
I think he's a senior, junior, but he's an experienced guard. Someone that I really like is I'm trying to say his name, Milan Mom Cliff. I don't know how to say his last name, but
Milan,
number
we'll just go with
22
that, yep.
shooter. He's someone that I think is an NBA player. Honestly speaking, I think he's in his sophomore year or junior.
He's a junior, and it's
Junior,
funny. His freshman year in the
yeah.
Big 12 tournament
That's
championship game,
that's what I
he
found
went
out.
crazy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I think he's definitely he's like what 6'7", 6'8", can
Yep.
shoot the heck out the ball. So they're a team that, and also they have a big as
Joshua
well,
Jefferson, I think, right?
one of the best bigs in the country as well. So they're a team that can make some noise. They play St. John's on Monday, so it'll be a again that I definitely want to get into watching. But they're a team that I think we haven't really talked about that much. That probably do deserve a little bit more notoriety and a little bit more shine. But yeah, I'm excited to see how they kind of do. Fair enough for some top teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Another team I'll just quickly highlight that I'm kind of looking forward to watching is Notre Dame. So
Mm,
their backcourt is the coach's son Shrewsbury, along
mm,
with Marcus Burton, who actually
mm,
last year got hurt in this tournament. But they're an experienced group. They have a five-star freshman, Jalen Harrelson, coming in. This team, they're going against, I believe their first game is Kansas. So right, Kansas without Darren Peterson. It's going to be a very winnable game for them. So I'm interested to see that. And I think their second game they play Rutgers possibly. So again, two games where, they could definitely win those games. And, that's huge for a team that's trying to make a tournament. And I think it's Shrewsbury's third year. So again, this is kind of, I wouldn't say make or break year, but definitely a year you want to kind of cement your
yeah,
program.
yeah. So Derek Peterson is not playing.
Yeah, he's 100% out for the tournament.
Hamstring
Yeah,
injury, right? Yeah, I mean that's especially with someone like him, where obviously college is great. You want to play, but he definitely has to sit that one out and stuff like that. But yeah, Notre Dame, that's a pull. Do you know
yeah.
what the record is right now?
They lost actually by one to Ohio State. So I think they're either three and
Mhm.
one or 4-1, but
That's
it was
pretty
on
good.
the road. But they're definitely a team I'm interested to see because, like many people going into that Kansas game, probably aren't familiar with Notre Dame. But going from last year and what they have coming in this year, they're definitely a team that could make some noise. So I'm interested to see them
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm excited. No, it's one of the best weeks in college basketball. If it's not March, it's like this feast week is where
Yeah,
it's.
no, it's great. And I think another point that we could talk about here is why are these tournaments so important, not just from the NIL standpoint, but just from a team standpoint? And maybe you want to touch on that first, and then I could definitely add to
Yeah,
whatever you got to say.
I mean, I think especially like the past couple of years, we've seen these very high level games early on the season. Even these exhibition games this year was like
Absolutely.
these teams are
Yeah,
playing high level exhibition games. I think for these coaches, for these teams, is how's your team going to fare up versus a team that you may see in March? Obviously, conference play is conference play. You're going to get probably great run throughout that, but it's like you see these teams twice a year. You guys be play against teams that you don't really
right.
see that much early on, so once the March does come, you can kind of go back, see what was working, see what wasn't working. And yeah, I mean, you always want to challenge yourself, challenge your team, and it's like no better way to do it like early on the season in these tournaments. Stakes are high. Obviously, play a lot of high level games, so a lot of ranked games. So obviously, these rankings are going to change a lot probably this next week. But I just think these coaches want to see how their team kind of fares up. I don't think they obviously want to win, but I think they want to learn more about how their team is and what players can do what rather than what the result is of the game. So I think it's really important.
I think sometimes, and you bring up a great point there, it gets overblown. Like, okay, early in the season, things don't really matter yet. It's not conference play. But versus these quality opponents, you really figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are, right? So you could go forward with whether it's practice, and we'll talk about a little later, practice and whatnot, what it looks like this year for teams across college, but you really know what to work on, right? If you're going against a team with inferior talent, it's nothing but downside in my opinion, because if you struggle against those teams, it's like, okay, we really have a problem, because if we're going against Alabama, Bucknell's a little different than Alabama, unfortunately, so that could be an issue. But yeah, I just think it really gets you get to see firsthand, okay, where's my team at? And it's not like, for example, I'll use Kentucky. They lost two early season games this year so far, and people are a little down on them. But it also, on one hand, gives them the opportunity now to realize, okay, this is what we need to work on, and this is where our team is, and that's the only way you're going to find out to get better.
Yeah.
The second aspect I bring up is now with this quad system where there's quad one wins, basically you get wins against quality opponents, quad two, three, and four, depending on, where a team is ranked, for example, in the net rating. And I think in the NCAA tournament now, you see a lot of these teams, their seeding, whether they get in the tournament, is dependent on how many quad one wins they have. And this is a great opportunity on these neutral courts to get those because, for example, if you win a game against the 80th ranked net team on a neutral court, that's a lot more valuable than you're playing a home game against maybe a team that's ranked higher than 80th, 50th, 40th. So I think that's definitely a huge thing as well, just from getting the highest seed possible. And Coach Nate Oates from Alabama always talks about that. You see their non-conference schedule; it's some of the craziest.
Gauntlet. It's literally
Yeah.
a gauntlet.
So I think that just from an NCAA tournament perspective, right, getting a higher seed, I mean, there's no doubt a greater advantage in the tournament. So that's also a pretty big one as well that I just wanted to touch upon.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. I started laughing a little bit. Obviously, at RPI this past year, I think, and it's a little bit different with in terms of level and stuff like that. But you want to start off with these competitive games, like you said. Sometimes it'll bite you, and then and the you know what at the end of the
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
you take a tough loss versus a not great opponent. We know a lot about that.
yeah.
Um, and it's just a bad look. You know what I'm saying? So that is actually a great point that you bring up.
And I think too, again, I think on a neutral court, another aspect of it is in the NCAA tournament, conference tournaments, you're playing back to back days usually, or you're playing one day rest and then another game. During the year, you don't really get that.
Right.
So in these tournaments, this kind of simulates that,
Mhm.
NCAA tournament, conference tournament type feel of okay, like we won a
Yeah.
game on Friday. Scratch that. We got to play tomorrow and focus on the next opponent. So I think it's a good
Totally.
simulation, really, for how these NCAA tournament games go. And that's why a lot of guys say, I remember Mark Sears last year, he said like this was like a Final Four game, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's no surprise. So
Yeah, we've seen that a lot early too. Like all these games we've seen, these high level games we've seen so far, have felt like March Madness. I felt like Sweet 16, Final Four, Elite Eight games. So
yeah.
I mean, aside from the actual playing the games as a fan and as just like a lover of basketball, this is
Oh
Christmas.
no,
So
it's gonna be tough to. I won't admit it's gonna be tough to focus on work in the afternoon for me personally, but it'll be all right. But
yeah,
and
yeah.
then wrapping up kind of this feast week talk here. Maybe what's one tournament that's gone on already this weekend this week that you're looking forward to that maybe it's not the quote unquote big name one. Obviously, the big names are Maui, Battle for Atlantis, Players Era. So maybe you could, share with us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, obviously, when we were talking about this question, I looked a little bit more deep into it. I think I'm going to go with the Fort Myers tip-off tournament down in Fort Myers. Obviously, got teams like UNC, Michigan State, who are obviously really good ranked teams have that we kind of
Yeah.
well, I like Michigan State. But then you have some smaller teams. You have St. Bonaventures, East Carolina, Bowling Green, Bucknell, Buffalo, as well as VMI. I think that's just a cool mixture of some top teams who can play some other type of styles, and then some smaller teams that can get that exposure against these bigger teams. And like you said before, maybe improve their net rating and stuff like that. Later in the year.
Yep.
Obviously, St. Bonnie's is another great team in the A10. I think they're 4-0 or 5-0 right now. So,
Yep.
I think they play. Let me not mess this up. Who will they play tomorrow?
Is it a tournament where each team gets, is it like an actual tournament style?
I believe it's actual tournament style. As I'm going through
Okay.
the ESPN, it's showing like blank games, so I'm pretty sure it's like whoever moves
Yeah.
on and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, but St. Bonaventure's they either play, yeah, they played North Carolina on Tuesday, so that's just like a great opportunity
Yeah.
for them as a smaller team, but also it's me a great game for UNC because you're not playing. Yes, a mid-major team, but they're going to be a competitive team, and
Absolutely.
it's good for a lot of fans to see a team like St. Bonaventure's, a team like Buffalo, like you probably never really see on national television. So that's probably the term I got just because there's a mixture of both high-level teams as well as mid-major teams.
Yeah, and just to build upon your mid-major point there, it's hard nowadays to get a school, especially a high major school, to schedule games against a mid-major tournament that's not in a tournament setting just because there's so much downside for them.
So
They're
much.
never going to go to the mid-major school because they're going to be like, no way. And then St. Bonaventure, for example, going to UNC on November 15th, that's a tall task. So having to play in that tournament setting, and they get multiple different opponents. So I think that's great for the mid majors that they actually get a shot to boost their resume if their leagues aren't quote unquote as good as the ACC or the Big 12.
Yeah, we
Uh,
were just talking to Avery Brown on his podcast, and he was saying how they went to Villanova, and he's
yeah,
feeling like a chip on his shoulder. So obviously, we know how these like mid-major teams are coming in with that mindset of like we can make a name for ourselves, we can get us out there. So it's good for them, and then also like I bet UNC, Michigan State, they both know that they're probably coming in like that. So it's just
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
mindset probably for these teams. So I'm excited to watch a little bit of that.
Yeah. And then just to add, a tournament that I really liked, it actually already happened, but it was the Baha Mar tournament. And last year as a St. John's fan, it broke my heart a little bit when they lost to Baylor, and that I think it was triple or double overtime. It
Yeah,
was
I
something
remember that
crazy.
game. That was crazy.
Yeah, and this year we had Memphis and Purdue, and Memphis, fought with Purdue that whole game, and it was a great game. And then
Mhm.
Texas Tech, Wake Forest, right down the wire, and both games the next day, Purdue and or no, it was Wake Forest and Memphis, right? Wake Forest, they had a buzzer beater. It was a great win for Wake Forest. What great game, and then Texas Tech and Purdue was supposed to be a great game. It didn't turn out that way.
Let's talk about this game a little bit. Obviously, my player of the year that I chose
Yeah,
is JT Toppin. Your player of the year that you chose is Braden Smith out of Purdue, JT Toppin out of Texas Tech. This was a hard game for me to even pick who's gonna win. I thought it was gonna be obviously sometimes you get smacked, but I thought it would be a way closer game. I thought both these teams are really really high level, which they both are. But it was just a lopsided game. What do you think? Like, what was your outlook to that game? Why do you think it kind of went the way it did?
yeah. So my personal opinion, I've watched Texas Tech twice now. I told you before the game, I was like Texas Tech is going to win. I really thought they were ready, but
Mhm.
Texas Tech revolves so much around two players, their point guard Christian Anderson and JT Toppin. And in my opinion, and they had I forgot the young man's name, but they had a guy who hit three threes to start like in the first 5 minutes for Texas Tech, and that was great for them. But they, in my opinion, right now they're searching for guys 2 through 8 or 3 through 8 on that team, and you could tell it's a little bit of a new group, whereas Purdue is, they're a well-oiled machine, right?
Right.
I think their bench in terms of Meyer, Jacobson. There's a freshman who also I liked. I don't know his name, but all three of those guys would be starters at a lot of Power Five schools. So I just think their continuity, it doesn't it if Braden, he played very well, but you see like their sets, whether it was CJ Cox, whether it was Trey Kaufman Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, all those guys were getting great looks, and that was a team in my opinion that this point of the year is just so much farther ahead. It's not that Texas Tech can't get to that point, but I think what gets so overblown is when you have a team with not only just elite coaching, guys that have elite talent, but they've all played together, right? That matters in basketball. I don't care. Like people will say, like for it's about talent, and yes, it is. But if there's something to definitely earn the year to playing together versus nowadays, it's like most teams are, every year's a new squad.
Yeah.
So it was disappointing from Texas Tech. It definitely wasn't their best outcome, but Purdue, honestly, they played as good as you can play. So I think it was a little bit of combination of Purdue played really well, and that was probably one of the best. That was the best individual game I've seen from a team so far this year, along with Texas Tech. They're figuring it out right now.
No, I think just from watching this first couple weeks, I think Purdue, like you said, is just like the most ready team right now.
Right,
They have the continuity. They've been playing each other for 4 years now. Obviously, a lot of these new teams and teams that they've been playing, newer teams. But I think, and we talked about this on the last episode, how or one of the last episodes, how continuity is just so important. And early on, I think Purdue's the best team like, not by far, but they're kind of head and shoulders above everyone right now, in my opinion.
right.
But it'll be interesting to see, obviously, as the season goes on, will it kind of stay that way or teams kind of pick it up and get to that point with them, but which probably will happen. But yeah, that was a little bit of a shock to me as well. I thought it was gonna be much closer. I thought it could have gone either way, but it does make sense why Purdue kind of handily did what they did to them. So
Yeah, and an interesting thing from a I know they have I think they still have a player hurt Texas Tech, but they really only went like six, maybe there was a seventh guy, but their depth was really like lacking. And I was like, for a team that's supposed to be a top 10, 15 team in the country, they really need to figure out where they're getting from the bench because they're not going to be able to beat teams for the whole year across the Big 12 playing, five, six guys.
yeah.
So,
But at the end of the day, yeah, it comes down to the depth because, like you said, you have 3 4 guys off the bench that you can know that go in there and make an impact. It's like a team like
yep,
Purdue. It's like damn, like
right.
you can let Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Run Kaufman, kind of sit down for a little bit, gain some,
Right, right.
energy back, and that's just kind of dangerous. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's
I don't disagree. So that was definitely a tournament I like. But as we get into the season here, and as we've seen more teams, or this week, we're definitely going to see a lot more teams. What's maybe an underrated, specifically a mid-major team that not only we like, but maybe you specifically like?
yeah.
I could start us off. I'll give you two teams here that I've actually seen play. One was I've seen them twice actually, is Murray State. So I saw them the first game of the year when they played Nebraska Omaha, and what stood out to me, especially at that their levels, their size and their depth. They played 9 or 10 guys, and they were without at the time, I believe, their starting center. It was a transfer from Creighton, and they did really well. Then they went at SMU, and it was a pretty close game against SMU. They lost, but it was pretty impressive, and I'm excited to follow them. I think they're in the Missouri Valley Conference. So I'm excited to watch because usually that conference, whoever the winner is, usually produces a pretty good, first or second round game in the tournament. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to watch them
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then the second team is it's probably cheating. I'm saying this is San Diego State.
Hmm.
I did see I actually watched a fair amount of the game against Troy, and that was,
Hmm.
definitely disappointing. But I'll give, Troy almost beat USC. So
Yeah.
maybe they're not as bad as
Yeah,
people think.
yeah. That was a crazy game too.
Yeah,
I saw the
but
highlights and the end of it. That was crazy.
yeah. So they just got their center back, San Diego State, so that's good. And they have huge games this week. They play Oregon and Michigan in the Players Tournament,
Hmm.
and those are going to be huge games for them if they want an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament, so they don't have to rely on getting that conference tournament
Yeah.
championship. So their team, I think is most people I would say have them outside the top 25. I think they're a top 25 team.
Hmm. Yeah. You've
So
been
yeah,
you've been raving about them since
I
before the
know.
season
Yeah,
started.
it feels like July or August at this
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. So no, that I gotta tap into them a little bit more. So I mean, obviously, I trust your word, but yeah, I mean, team for me is I highlight this on my Instagram as well is George Washington. Um, they're 5-0 right now. Another team in the A10, a very stacked A10. How we kind of highlighted earlier with St. Bonnie's, but they're a dangerous team. They have 9 players, like their whole team basically. Everyone that plays averages 8 or more points, which
yeah,
is like you don't really ever see that ever at any level
no,
of college basketball. Where a full team, like 8 points in college, is a pretty good amount, depending on how much your
right,
team scores. So for them to have 9 players to average over 8 points really tells me that like something with the coaching, the team in general, like one, it's a balanced scoring attack. So like we kind of mentioned in an episode earlier before is um, who can you really hone in on? Who as an opposing coach, who can you kind of say this is their star player? We gotta stop him. It's like no, it could be this guy's game. He may go for 20. It might be this guy's game. He might go for 20 themselves. So they're a really good team. I'm just going to list some players. I actually played with one of the players that are on the team. There's starting point guard Christian Jones. I've known him. He's from Stratford, Connecticut, Bridgeport area. Played high school with him for a little bit. One of the best players I've ever played with in my life. Tell a little story. I was a junior in high school, reclass junior, so I was a senior, and he was in 8th grade, and we were both starting the backcourt. And I remember there was this one game we played a team, a very high level game, team called Greens Farmers Academy, and I was giving him the ball late in the game, like, "Yo, go win this game." Like he's in 8th grade, I'm a junior in high school. Like I had no pride. I was like, "Yo, go win this game for us." And so he's a very special player. His name is Christian Jones. He's averaging around 11 points, I think. Yeah, 10.5 points at that time. Um, they have guys like Rafael Castro, their big man, who's very good. Guys like Trey Dinkins, Garrett Johnson, who's also really good. So they're a team that can make some noise. They actually play today. I don't. They play. It's playing right now actually, but another team at 8-10 that I think can make some noise, and then you never know they can make a tournament. So definitely a team I'm really excited to keep looking forward to this year.
yeah, because that conference, as we know, that A10 is definitely going to be very competitive this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they not only do a non-conference but during the conference play. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. So moving on to the next topic, we'll talk about the AP Top 25, what our general thoughts are, what teams we think should be in versus what teams probably shouldn't be. So
Mhm.
maybe you could just start off with, your general thoughts as a whole
Uh,
of the AP top
yeah,
25.
so right now we're going based off of the new AP isn't out yet. We're going off of based
I think
off
it's
of
week 3, right?
yeah, we're still on week three, so that was like
Yep.
what last Sunday or Monday, wherever they put
Yep.
it. So it's basically the top 25 from this past week. This episode was recorded from.
Yep.
So I'll go with a team that I think should be a little bit lower on the list, or a couple of teams. I think I kind of highlighted it already, but I do think Florida as well as Michigan should be a little bit lower, especially Florida. I'm just not too high on them right now. I think. Um, they're still figuring it out. They've had some close calls, close games with, like I said, Florida State at home. They only won by, they should have lost that game, a couple of points, but they're a team that I think they're getting better. They got, Xavier Lee. He's making that transition to the Power Five. He's doing okay, not really shooting the ball as well as probably he would like, but and then you have the makeup of the two bigs, Condon, Chinelu. So they got to also figure out how to play. So they're a team that I do think was ranked 10 at the time that I don't think it deserves that higher of a rating. Another team is Michigan. I think they're really good, but they've also had some close calls with a TCU Wake Forest where they probably should have lost both of those games. So they could easily have two losses and be definitely lower in the AP 25. But another team that I think is definitely a work in progress. A team that I do think could be higher, there's a couple of teams. Uh, yeah, actually, a few teams. I do like Gonzaga a lot. I do think they're ranked 13 when this AP was dropped. I think they'd be a little bit higher when the new one comes out. Just an experienced team. They're a team that I think can definitely make some noise. They're in the players' area as well, so it'll be interesting to see how they do this week. Michigan State, they had a big win this past week. They kind of just can keep proving people wrong, shooting the ball very well their last game. So they'll probably move up as well. And then, it's also tough to say for this, but I do like. I'm not gonna say this actually. Next topic. Go ahead.
No
Go.
worries. But if people don't realize that Chuck's a huge Duke fan, so I'll let
Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys fill in
yeah.
the
So
blanks on that
if
one.
you guys can see where I'm coming from, I can't say it out
Right.
loud. I don't. It hurts the heart to even think about it, but yeah, that's the teams I'm thinking about so far.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a lot of good points. One team that I'll start us off with that I think should be actually ranked in the top 25 is Virginia Tech. So I've seen them play. They played a home game, and I'm not sure. I apologize, but I forgot who they were playing.
Was
But
it Bryant?
I don't think it was Bryant, but it was a
Yeah,
lower tier school, and they kind of handled them, blew them out.
yeah. Bryant was a pretty close game actually.
Yeah, and I just think this week they played in the Battle for Atlantis. I think they played Colorado State first. They could play St. Mary's next. They're going to play for the first time this year. I mean, they beat Providence, so that was a quality opponent, but I think that's a team, especially with the point guard play. Their coach is very underrated, actually, I think. I just think they haven't had the talent recently. So I think I'll be interested to see them because I think their point guard, I think by the end of the year, he'll be a first round pick, no doubt. And maybe even lotto pick. He's going to be awesome.
Top five.
Um, yeah,
I
no,
think I
I
think
yeah,
I think like you going that high, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
yeah, he's no, he's awesome. So I think they should definitely be in the top 25. I'd say another team that I think, even though they lost this week, I think just watching them play is Illinois. I think Illinois, they're my pick, I would say, to win the national championship. I just think in the Alabama game, they had one or two guys still that were working back from injury. They shot like 59% from the free throw line, which is
A lot of
great.
games.
Yeah, which is crazy. But and not that Alabama's a bad loss, but they just have so many weapons on that team. And I think they're 8 right now. In my opinion, they're no doubt top 5 team in the sport. So that would be one. A team that I would say would be lower on right now. And I know this kind of, stings a little bit because they just blew out someone, but I don't think BYU is the ninth best team in the country. Now, I think Wisconsin, who's also 23rd, they might not be a top 50 team in the country at this rate. So, BYU, I think they have a lot of talent. My question for them is over the course of conference play, when teams get a scout on them, especially AJ DeBonsa, he's someone, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious if you watched him play. Like, he's someone who's going to take his time, get to his spot, But when you play against teams, especially in your conference that know and see more of you, they're going to figure that out. And my question for them is, can Rob Wright be the second guy that's going to initiate offense for them? Richie Saunders is more of a catch and shoot guy. He can go to the basket and whatnot, but I just don't know without one of their starters, who I think no update yet, but he's still out. So I
Yeah.
just question, do they have enough talent and do they play enough defense, especially in the Big 12, to warrant that number? Oh, they're number 9 in the country, excuse me. But do they warrant that top 10 rating? I think they could be a top 25 team. I would probably lean towards no, even still. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays throughout the year.
You've obviously been and not like lower down that team, but you see some concerns with them. So, um, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think,
And yeah, I just think obviously versus Wisconsin, I was very impressed with them. Honestly, offensively, they got whatever they wanted. And I think a great point, and for these tournament games, now that I think about it, we should bring up is sometimes these games are played on NBA courts. And watching that game, I was watching Wisconsin, and I was like, they're missing a lot of shots, but man, those shots look far back. And then you bring up the point to me, like, yeah, this is in an NBA, arena. And
yeah,
I'm like, that's gonna be something to look out for if some of these teams are playing in like professional NBA gyms, because it's like I felt just like BYU throughout the whole game just had way easier shots, and some of it was just like, yeah, it's an NBA court, like you got to step a foot or two in,
yeah. No, and the real thing is that because sometimes they play on these NBA courts, but they take away the NBA line.
right?
But in the game versus BYU and Wisconsin, a lot of other games where I've seen it, they didn't take away the NBA line, so these guys are like setting up behind the NBA line because that's what they see,
Hmm.
and they're just gonna shoot these shots, and it's like you're you're intrinsically thinking that you're shooting a college three, so but you see the line, so you think it's a college three, so you're gonna use that same type of power into your shot if it's a
Right?
college three. That's why that game there was like so many air balls. Like I think I counted at least four like in the first half, especially from
Yeah,
Wisconsin. Like I'm like, damn, how you airballing so much, and then they're
no,
just
I don't.
shooting the NBA line. So
Yeah, I don't disagree.
that was a tough watch. That was a tough watch, but I don't
But
know.
the
I think BYU for that game specifically with Wisconsin, um, they looked a little bit more cohesive more than that UConn game looked a little bit more like they were decisive what they wanted to do. I think Rob Bray, like you said, he has to be a type of player like every game for them to kind of take that load off of AJ and Richie Saunders as well
and
because yeah,
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say, Rob Wright, he did a I give him a lot of credit. He was phenomenal on Johnny Blackwell defensively. He
Yeah.
made, I mean, it was tough for Wisconsin. Nick Boyd, Johnny Blackwell, those guys are really good players for Wisconsin at the guard spot. And Rob Wright he was just a menace. So he played phenomenal. I give him a lot of credit. No,
And
he was great.
that's what they're gonna need. They're gonna need somebody that's gonna be
Hmm.
that dog figure on the defensive end. You know what I'm saying? I think, AJ, he has that ability to do that, but he's also taking a lot of load on the offensive end. So it's gonna be hard to ask him to be, this type of player defensively, also offensively as well. So, they just need to find certain places, certain players take the load off of Richie Saunders as well as AJ. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, how they kind of do these next few weeks before conference play starts, and then kind of just go from there. But
Yeah, and then maybe we could both, share. Maybe we'll have some similarities, differences. But would you say so far as the top 5 teams that you've seen? Now, again, I'll use an example. I've not watched Houston play yet, a full game, so obviously I wouldn't have them ranked in the top 5 because I haven't seen them play. It doesn't mean that they aren't, but I just haven't seen them play. So I could go first, you go first, whatever
no,
whatever you
go
want.
ahead, go ahead.
I would say no doubt the best team I've seen so far is Purdue. They have just, they played Alabama on the road. What was more impressive to me in that game was how much they controlled the pace. As we've seen Alabama play 2 very good teams, St. John's and Illinois, they controlled the pace. And that's hard to do, especially on the road. And then Texas Tech, it just looked like 2 different sports.
Yeah.
So I would definitely go Purdue's my number 1 team. This might shock a little people. My number 2 team I've seen so far is Louisville. So Louisville, in my opinion, when they played Kentucky, what stood out to me was the shot making. It's like, wow, we getting it from everywhere. Whether it's Conwell, McNeely, Hadley, obviously Michael Brown, unreal. What really changed my opinion of them was when they went on the road to Cincinnati, and I watched that game. And Cincinnati defensively, they're a very good defensive team. Offense might be a little bit of a different story, but defensively, they are awesome. Their ball pressure, their just length, size. They were, Louisville was down in the first half, and it was tough for them to get anything going. Michael Brown couldn't get anything going. What really stood out to me with that team was usually with those types of teams on the road, it's very easy for them to fold if their primary creator, I'll say, kind of doesn't have a great game. What's different between this Louisville team is Ryan Conwell is their secondary creator, and he would be a primary creator on any other team for the most part, and he was great, right? And in a game where it was a more defensive, grinded out type of battle, they were able to show that they could win, that type of game on the road versus Cincinnati team is they're going to beat quite a few quad one teams this year in the Big 12 just because of their defense and whatnot. So I think it was good to see a Louisville team that struggled with that definitely last year in the past do that this year, especially on the road and early in the season. So they're definitely my number two team. My number three team, no shock here, is Arizona. I think that they've had so many good wins. UCLA, UConn, Florida, and they've played three, different style teams. All, Florida's up and down. UCLA is very defense, half court focused, and UConn's very slow, methodical on offense at UConn. So Arizona, no doubt, they'd be my number three team. Number four, I would have to say Alabama. Again, they've beaten two quality teams, St. John's and Illinois. Illinois, obviously, I'm very high on. St. John's fan I am. And Alabama's just, I always think to myself, like, okay, this is where they're going to start missing and whatnot. But the key to that team, in my opinion, is they are a very underrated offensive rebounding team, in my opinion. So they might miss a shot or whatnot, but they had, I think in the Illinois game, they had a new player. I think his name's Bristow, but
Hmm.
he's a big guy. He was awesome, getting a lot of second chances.
Yeah.
Amari Allen, I know versus St. John's in that game was also big in that department. Their team, Holloway and Phylon are going to be so tough to stop. But if you can't stop them from getting offensive rebounds, it's going to be even harder. So they're my number four team. Number five, there's a lot of good options. You could say Gonzaga. I could definitely say UConn, but I'm going to still say Illinois. I think that they showed me something against Texas Tech without their two, best players or two of their better players. And even the Alabama game, I thought the free throws, a little bit bad luck there. And I think they're really talented. I'm very sold on them. So a lot of good options. Could have put Duke, could have put Gonzaga, but I'll go with Illinois there.
Yeah. No, that's a great list. Pretty similar with what I have. Also, just going off what I've seen so far, I'm gonna break it down into three tiers. Five teams, three tiers. I think tier one, you said the two teams, Purdue and Arizona. They play some very high level games. They come out on top. Arizona going on the road versus UConn. Obviously, UConn was missing Terrence Reed, but you go into an environment like that. It doesn't really matter if they are missing a starter like that because that environment just builds just anxiousness, nervousness between for teams. And Jaden Bradley, he's we gotta give him some respect. Gotta give him the whole country to give him some respect. He's one of the best point guards in the country. Top five, you got to put him up there. He's
He
showing it.
is so good in the pressure situations of just he never seems sped up.
Mhm.
Just makes the
No,
right play, but
no,
continue.
no. I'm just yeah, and you know Purdue. Obviously, we've seen versus Texas Tech. They play some Alabama high level games, and they're kind of just going on the road versus Bama. That's not an easy place to go. Like you kind of said, they dictate that whole pace. They force Bama into tough twos, which Bama never does. So that was really good for me to see Purdue kind of take that challenge on the defensive end, and then you go in versus Texas Tech with a potential Player of the Year candidate and a team that made noise last year was looking to make a Final Four run this year and kind of just beat them by 30. So
Yeah, I mean Texas Tech. Many people have them picked to win the Big 12,
yeah,
and JT
yeah,
Toppin as the Naismith Player of the Year. That's
yeah,
an
easily
unreal
great
performance.
win. So
Yeah,
yeah, they're definitely those are my tier one teams. Tier two, I think it's just only two tiers. Tier two, I have Duke, Illinois, and I also have Houston. You kind of highlighted Illinois. They're a team that can be very dangerous. Like they, you have Boswell at the one older experienced player, but then you have these other players like Stojakovic, who can, like he just showed last week, can take over a game. If he makes some free throws, that would have been great. But he can just take over a game at that 2-3 spot. Player that I do like, I think can be an underrated player for them. I don't know this guy's name. He's the freshman shooting guard, curly hair, light skinned kid.
Wagler, Keaton Wagler.
Yes, he's someone that just brings an extra dynamic of someone that can score the ball from them. So it's like, damn, like you got them three at the backcourt spots, and like you kind of said, earlier, there's some guys that are still coming back, still working into it. I kind of like the backup point guard from overseas. He's,
Petrovic.
he's still starting off. Still starting off, so it'll be interesting to see him. But the front court, very smart front court, overseas front courts, they're all smart. But they're a team that I do like, and I think that's a great pick that you had. Duke, obviously, they kind of dominated teams last week. They still have some stuff to work on. I think, when your best players are younger freshmen, sophomores, it's going to take time. I think Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer, the point guard, are going to be huge for this team because they're going to be the ones that are running the team. You got to get Isaiah Evans to the good spots. You have to get to Cam Boozer in good spots. The big Patrick Nabunga, he's I think another underrated player for them because he brings on defensive end. Offensively, he gets tons of offensive rebounds. Just a force inside for them that I think um, they were kind of missing these past couple years in terms of like someone that can you can trust down there in the low post. Obviously, we had pretty good bigs, but I think he's someone that's just another smart player that can be like a bruiser and stuff like that. Then Houston, obviously, we get from Houston every single year. They're going to bring it defensively. Joseph Tugler, I think he's taking a much more um, he's gotten to a better level offensively. Like they're trusting him with the ball down low, making plays, whether it's going for him to go to score down low, whether it's him making passes out of that. So he's definitely impressed me a lot. Chris Cenac, 6'10", 6'11" dude that's just flying off the walls. Like he's a great 1-2 punch with Tugler down low because he could play on the perimeter as well. And then
Absolutely.
obviously you still got Uzman. The other freshman, Flemings, I believe his name is, he's emerging as a young star. Probably gonna be a top 20 pick. We've highlighted him a little bit, but just
Yeah.
another person that they can trust on the backcourt that can kind of just he got to get buckets any way he can. So, and then obviously we know what Samson's gonna have them doing defensively. They're flying around, they're making stuff
Absolutely.
for everybody. So they're probably on that tier two as well. I'm excited to see them play in this tournament this upcoming week because I want to see them play against some higher level teams. But um, yeah, those are probably my top five so far.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great list. I'm excited to see Houston again. I haven't seen them yet, so I'm excited to watch them play. I'm sure they're definitely deserving of a top
Mhm.
five, and hopefully they'll prove it this week.
Mhm.
But maybe also too over this, early start to the year. What's one player you'd say that is kind of under the radar, or maybe one or two players that maybe they're just underrated, or even should be getting some NBA draft buzz in your opinion?
Yeah. So I would say two players are underrated. The draft buzz, I don't know if they have the intangible in terms of like their height, at least right
Right,
now.
right.
One player's older player, one player's younger player, so it's different for them.
Yep,
I'll go with the older player first. I texted you about this Bruce Thorin out of
yep,
Ohio State. Last time I checked, he was averaging like 25 points. And that's kind of a guy we obviously you hear about the freshman class, you hear about these bigger name teams, but he's playing for a Ohio State team that's going to be competitive throughout the whole year, and he's averaging like 25 points. Older guard, senior guard, I believe, has been in the system for a long time, so he's just kind of taking that next step early on in the season. From he's always been a good player, but like when you average 25, that's like a different type of level. So
right.
he's a guy that I'm pretty impressed with. Another person I've been high on that is kind of getting a little more buzz right now, but at first really wasn't. Is freshman out of Stanford, Uduke. I don't know how to say his last name, but freshman out of Stanford. He went to Brewster Academy actually. 6'2" little guard. He's twitchy, fast, and he was last time I checked, he was averaging like 27 points. And
Jesus.
he's like tied third in the country. And
Yeah,
from the freshman class where you're hearing about Boozer, the Peterson, all these guys, and he was someone that I kind of felt is under the radar in terms of that freshman class. So when you're averaging over 20 points in college, I think there's definitely have to be buzz around your name. And these are some
absolutely.
guys that, I haven't really been seeing that much throughout social media, on TV and stuff like that. So those are probably my two main players that I'm definitely excited to see how they kind of go along the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, again, great answers. I could give one, I give two, I guess. One guy who I mentioned him earlier, but I still don't think people realize how good he is, as I think he could be ACC Player of the Year. I think he could be ACC First Team Player of the Year, is Ryan Conwell. Ryan Conwell, he reminds me a little bit of like similar play style of like a Walter Clayton, where older kind of, you see how they move without the ball. You see when they have the ball in their hands, how much the defense is focused on them and their shot making ability. He made some tough shots against Cincinnati where I was like, wow, he's someone who I think on that team, and no doubt, no, I mean, he deserves it. Michael Brown obviously deserves all the praise and whatnot, but he's someone Conwell I think could easily be first team All ACC, and who knows? It's going to be tough to win Player of the Year in that conference with Neo from Virginia Tech and Boozer from Duke, but he's someone who I think could have a really strong year, and I would be very excited to see him in
How
the
tall is
NCAA.
he?
I'll have to look it up while I'm talking here,
I
but
think
he could be
he looks like what, six
6'4".
two? Yeah, okay. So I was saying 6'2", 6'4". He could honestly be I think he get drafted for sure.
Yeah,
Um, if I were, I'd probably see him at, because he's older, probably like mid second round right now. But he worked his way up. We've seen it a little bit recently with the NBA. They're getting older guards now with like 20 through the 30 picks. So he maybe could find himself in the right situation like a Golden State or stuff like that. But um,
right. No, I think with older players now is the coach, especially NBA scouts, if you're an older player, they want to see you. They want to see you're dominating, right? They don't
right.
want to see a guy who's quote unquote just efficient. They want to see the numbers and what can translate. Maybe the 20 points a game or whatever 15 points a game he has at Louisville won't translate, but if he's someone who's making 3 to 4 threes a game, that's going to translate to the NBA level, right? So that's one player. Another player who I, watch a lot of on St. John's is Dylan Mitchell. Dylan Mitchell is someone who is not going to shoot 40% from three. He might not even average double digit points this year. But the two things that guy does at an elite level is he defends and he rebounds like nobody's business. And he's someone on a team where there's a lot of different players in terms of needing the ball and whatnot. He's a great, I'll call him a connector. Where on defense, he's rotating well. He's able to switch on the guards. And offensively, he's a good passer. He's unselfish. He runs the floor hard. He's someone who I could easily see winning Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East and being, a first, second, third team All Big East selection. And he could be someone if St. John's wants to make a deep run in March. He's a huge reason why. So he's an underrated guy for sure
Yeah,
for
this is a
me.
guy that he's a five-star coming out of high school. I want to
Yep.
say he was at least top 15. So, I mean, obviously, he's moved, bounced around a little bit. Obviously, probably hasn't gone the way he probably thought it was going to be, but he's always had that athleticism, that will, that drive to kind of do what you were saying, get rebounds, run the floor, be a lob threat and stuff like that.
He had 3 possessions in a row. I know it's against Bucknell, but in terms of St. John's, but he had 3 possessions in a row where he basically just jumped the pass and like the next it was a windmill. It was crazy. I was like, oh my god, this guy's. I mean, he doesn't. I'm not even sure this year he'll take more than 10 threes, but he's just such a dynamic athlete and defensive player. So that's definitely an underrated guy for sure for me.
Motors. He has great motors, so
Yeah.
it's a good pick.
And yeah, so shifting topics here a little bit, obviously early in the season for all levels, Division One, two, and three, and even in high school. Maybe we could talk about, from your perspective as a player and then mine from a coach's perspective, how hard practice is every day. Because I don't think people realize what that's exactly like every day, especially at the
Man,
college level, and why it's important. So I'll let you go
man,
first.
practice. College level practice. We're talking about high level college. We're not talking about, there's some places that, that's another story. But it's hard. It's one of the hardest things you're gonna have to go through, in terms of like basketball and just in general. Like, going at RPI, Coach Mark Gilbride, we really emphasize the defensive end. And if anybody knows Mark Gilbride, he's like a perfectionist. Like, everything has to be up to his level, and his level is up here, and it has to be every single rep. Obviously, he's looking for the best, especially on the defensive end, even offensively. We're running stuff. If one thing is wrong, again, and we were talking about like this with Coach Karate. Is like, um, it has to be damn near perfect, and that's how it was with at RPI and with Coach Gilbride. So practice is much harder than the games. Games is where it gets fun. Games where the fun's at. Practice is where it's just like a living hell. You know what I'm saying? It's tough
Yeah.
because it's like every single day. Every
Yeah.
single day, you have to give it your all. Because once you get to college, it's not high school no more. It's not AU no more. If you come in there like, oh, all right, I'm gonna just mess around with this, go nonchalant, not go hard, you can see yourself on the bench, and you might not see yourself come back in for the rest of the season because he has someone else that could do the same thing that you do, but just going harder. So, and I tell a lot of kids this now, like, um, you got to treat practices like it is your game. So that means preparing how you would for a game. That means if you're getting the hot tub, if you're doing your activation stuff, you got to treat it like it's a game because it is a game because you're trying to prove to your coach that you should be on the court. So
Yeah.
it was definitely I mean, honestly, I would go back and do it once again, but it was definitely like a hard thing. It's hard on the body. It's hard on the mental side of things. It's hard on the competitive side of things because you're going at this same person every day, and you both know what you want to do. You know what you're running, but it's like who's going to kind of win that battle. So, yeah, practice was definitely something that wasn't easy. So, but how about from a coach perspective, though? I mean, obviously, players are doing the practice and it's hard, but what do coaches kind of look for each practice? You kind of, especially early on in the season where coaches are still figuring out what lineups they're working with, who can do what. What was your mindset coming from the assistant role at RPI when we came in,
Yeah.
starting out the season past couple of years?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you want to get ingrained, especially in the new players, freshmen, transfers, and even returning players to a certain extent, is you want to ingrain the fundamentals, whether that's offensively or defensively. You want to make sure your team understands what, for example, RPI basketball is, whether that's offensively in the half court, it could be transition defense, whatever it may be. You want to ingrain that. And as you know, the first week or two, that's all we do at RPI is ingrain what we want offensively and what we do defensively, and to give it some perspective. Sometimes, especially early in the year when we had kind of those quote unquote preseason practices, there would be practices where we wouldn't even focus on one side of the ball really. It was that other side of the ball that we would focus on, and most of the time it was offense. But it goes to show you like okay, that we really want to get these fundamentals down because that's the core of our team. And I think that early in the year, what you're looking for from a coach's perspective is you kind of know going into the year, okay, this is kind of what I want our team in terms of our roster and players to look like of who's going to play. But you want to see on the court, okay, what I'm thinking, is it validated? Is it actually happening? Is it, for example, a freshman, a sophomore, is that kid making that jump, of what I could see him doing? And I think a lot of the time, like people kind of have this I'd say illusion of like, oh, this kid's just gonna play. I think people don't realize how important if you're not gonna do what we ask of you in practice, when we go to Union, for example, or Hobart on the road, what makes you think you're gonna do it there? It's like if you can't do it in a practice setting, it's so hard. And as you know at RPI, sometimes our practices got way harder than a game because just the high level of expectations we have for you guys. So I think you're really looking. I view practice as like I'll compare it to school. Well, if you don't study for the test, it's going to be hard to do well on the test. Now I know these days a little different. I won't go into that, but with ChatGPT and whatnot. But it's like okay, same thing with basketball. If you're not going to, quote unquote, study for the test, participate in practice, and go hard and do what the coach is asking of you, how are you going to do well in the game? So that's why I think, practice is so hard for most players and even coaches at times because from a coach's perspective, you get frustrated a lot of the times because you feel like you're emphasizing this over and over again and the kid or player is just not doing what you ask of them, especially early in the year.
Yeah, it's a simple equation. Like do well in practice, you'll play in the games, but it's hard to do, and not everyone can do it.
It's also hard to do, especially when you're going against your teammates, right? Those guys, especially early in the year, everyone's motivated. Everyone wants to play, right?
Hmm.
So that's the ultimate we're going to bring it every day in practice. And on top of that, they know offensively and defensively what you're trying to do versus in a game setting, most teams don't know it to the extent of your own player. So that makes it even harder. You don't know how many times I've watched practice over the years where guys were just like so frustrated because they're like, he knows where I'm going. He knows exactly what to play, whatever. And that caused some pretty heated battles. But, it was That's why, practice, really makes teams because it's so competitive. You're going against quality opposition. You're going against also, sometimes the play or, defensively, offensively, whatever we're trying to run, it's not going to be, teams are going to have it covered. So what do you do, right? So it's a great kind of testing ground for that as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
But yeah, and then just maybe from a player's perspective, why is practice so important from obviously from a coach's perspective, it's important for many reasons, right? But from a player's perspective, why do you think it's important each and every day to go out there and, you know, not only participate but really go hard? Because some people they might say, okay, if you play on Friday and Saturday, for example, Thursday I'll take it easy, game on Friday. So your thoughts on that?
Um, I didn't have this kind of mindset or outlook on it earlier on in college. I don't know. I think this past year, especially when obviously me and Avery were captains, I think like you win your games like the days of practice. So
Oh
there was
yeah.
always something I was saying in the huddle was like, let's make today our best practice because
Yep.
we win tomorrow's game today in practice, and it just carries over the energy you bring in practice, the attention to detail, the intensity, the motivation. If you do it on, like you said, we have a Friday Saturday game. If you do that on, well, you gotta do it every day, but you gotta do it especially the day before because it carries over right into that Friday game. And like I said, I didn't have that outlook or anything on it earlier on, but as you know, I got later into my college career. I think it's a direct correlation of how like you come out in a game. If you have a slow practice the day before, you're probably gonna come out slow earlier on in the game, and it's gonna be hard to come back from. So it all correlates. It all is hand in hand. But I think how well you do in practice directly correlates to how well you're gonna do in a game. So
And I also think from a player's perspective, why practicing is important every day. I've seen time and time again, guys, let's say a kid, has a serious injury their freshman year. Their sophomore year, many people in their minds might think, okay, he's already been here a year. He
hmm
should know what we're trying to do. But the reality is he hasn't got the on the court reps. So it's like he's still a freshman pretty much
yeah,
because he doesn't know what we're trying to do because he hasn't got the on-court reps. And I feel like what gets overlooked in programs a lot of the time is freshmen and sophomores who practice every day. And when, let's say, you have a senior class, a heavy senior class, and they leave, those guys are now really ready to take over. And that's what makes programs the top programs. It's very hard to year in and year out, have so much turnover and have rely on freshmen to come in and play. If you can have one or two sophomores that next year, one or two juniors that next year, or one or two even seniors, as we know, come in and contribute, right? And they've practiced every day, they're going to be ready to do that versus guys where it's like, maybe I wasn't going as hard, my freshman year because I knew I wasn't going to play. And that's a lot of things I think players overlook is like you never know when your opportunity in college is going to be. I don't think you knew, for example, your opportunity was going to be specifically the start of your junior year when you started college, right? But you were ready for that opportunity,
yeah,
right? And I think a lot of guys, it's easy, especially when you're not playing, to just be like, all right, who cares about practice? But you're going to get better and the coach is going to want to trust you if they see you in practice, even against their starters, for example, doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like there's, for example, last year in our practices, Blake Smith was someone who you could see, and Billy Feeks also as well. Those two guys would do absolutely phenomenal in practice towards the end of the year because they got the on-court reps. And I remember a lot of the meetings after, practice and the coaching staff's like, wow, those guys, they're going to be really great players. And so far this year for RPI, they've been two very solid guys off the bench for them and hopefully they have a great year, but they wouldn't be in the spots they're in now without getting those reps. So shout out those guys. I
yeah.
hope
Shout out to
hopefully
I think it's definitely like a maturity thing too, because a lot of players they don't see
it's
that
hard.
long journey picture. It's like, damn, I'm not playing right now. It's like, why would I even care? But it's like, especially when you're young, that you have so much time
I
to
know.
improve and get better. And I think that's huge for younger players, especially whether you're in high school, starting out, college, starting out. It's like you got to work your way up. You can't just come in there and be the man if you're like not that great. You know what I'm saying? So Just work your way up. Like Caesar said, go hard in practice every single day. Learn as much as you can from if you have older players from the coaches. Because eventually, if you just like stick with it, and I truly believe this, if you stick with it and you put time into it, whether it's in practice off the court, eventually like your time, like you said, is gonna come, and then you will be ready for it. And
And
so I think
yeah,
it's
there's a difference also, a great point you make is it's not only sticking with it, it's mentally okay, having the real self-realization of this is my role, this is what the coach is asking for me, and I need to master that. Not just being the man, right? There, I don't know a single guy since I've been at was at RPI that came in as a freshman and he's the man. It's just
nobody.
unrealistic, right? So you just, I think there's a two-sided, to the coin there, but yeah, I think, practice is not only very important and it's extremely hard. I think most people don't realize that, but on the flip side of that is taking care of your body each day,
Yeah.
which I know you're someone who, if people aren't familiar with Chuck, you're always in the training room, always doing, yeah, I come in the locker room, I'm seeing Chuck do these stretches and I'm like, this is crazy. So I just want you to specifically kind of, what did you make sure that you did every day? What really enhanced your, ability to perform on the court?
Yeah, no, I think it's another aspect of basketball that I think people don't really take too serious, especially younger players. Because when you're young, you can wake up, literally just hop out of the bed and play. And as you get older, like that stuff kind of catches up with you a little bit. So obviously, just a little bit of background. I've had like multiple surgeries all on my shoulders. I've dealt with ankle problems. So I was the type of guy that really took that stuff serious and researched and asked my trainers, my PT guys back at home, like, what should I be doing? And for people like I was before practice, I'm like an hour and a half before practice, I had a whole routine, getting the hot
Right,
tub, my body warm, glute activation, ankle stuff, my shoulder stuff, getting right. And then I think it's even more important is after practice to you do that same kind of stuff. It gets your body, recovery is a little bit easier. So, and the best of what's it, the best ability is
it's
availability.
ability.
So if you're hurt all the time, you can't get on the court, and that's a direct correlation with being sure that your body is feeling good. So that was a huge thing for me, especially as I got later into my college career because you want to stay on that court. You don't want to get hurt, and it was basically every part of my body, get the ankle stuff, like I said, shoulder stuff, hip stuff, and it benefits you in so many different ways. Like past basketball, that I realized I just felt more flexible, more free. And in terms of basketball, you got to be in these weird positions sometimes. So it was definitely something that stuck with like every day. Like you see me like every
Yeah.
single day was like kind of the same routine. And I do think a lot of players should start adding stretching routines, activation routines right before practice because that stuff can help with injuries as well as get your body just going beforehand in practice. So it was huge for me.
And I think you could probably attest to this too. It's, eventually, hopefully, you get to the point where you get a comprehensive routine. But if you just spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and it's kind of like compound interest, it'll over time obviously make a huge difference. So
Yeah.
I think that's what you were just referring to there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously early in the season here, we could talk about kind of the mental side of things from a player and
Mhm.
coach's perspective.
Yeah.
And I could first start off again what coaches are looking for early in the year.
Hmm.
So, right, coaches want to first off, they want to figure out, okay, who's going to be their guys, quote unquote, whether that's their 7 guys, 8 guys, 9, 10 guys. They want to figure that out early in the year. So, for example, the first 5 to 10 games, I would say it's a lot of different rotations you're playing, a lot more lenient on who you're going to play. That way, by conference play, you kind of have your quote unquote set rotation, just figuring out which guys, you know, you're gonna play. And I think ultimately, like we talked about earlier with these kind of big name, tournaments for Feast Week, you want to see where your team's strengths and weaknesses are when you play these games. Not only in practice, you might have an inkling, okay, maybe we're not the greatest rebounding team, but if you go against, a good rebounding team and fare up well, it's like, okay, maybe I was just overreacting. So I think when you go against teams that are either of your caliber or even slightly better or way above, you could really figure out where your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think over the first 5 to 10 games, you're really able to feel that out because most of the time, you're at least going to play one or two teams who are probably better than you. And those games, even if you lose, You really figure out, okay, this is where my team's at. I'll use an example from last year. We played in our first, I think it was our first 2 games of the year in a tournament at Nazareth, and we played a very quality Cortland team, and we played a very quality Nazareth team, and we won those games, and they were tight games. They were not blowouts by any means, but we figured out as a team, you know, what our strengths were, and we knew, okay, after getting those 2 wins on a neutral court setting for Cortland and then on an away setting for Nazareth, okay, we have a really solid team here, right? So I think playing those big games early in the year, that's what coaches are looking for. Not necessarily wins or losses are great, but it's okay. What do we really need to improve on? And I also, sorry, a little, last tidbit is what happens when adversity hits? I think is a big thing early in the year, what coach are looking for. Because if your team is kind of just going to, let's say you're down 15 and a half and you lose the game by 25 to 30. Okay, there might be some basketball court stuff that obviously needs to be fixed, but mentally, like, there could be some things that are deeper issues there versus a team who was down 15 and a half. They might have come back and won. They might have lost the game by 5 or 6, but that kind of shows, okay, we have a group here that when things get tough, because as again, in conference play, there's going to be a lot of times where you're down in games and things are looking bleak. Trust me, there were so many games last year RPI where things weren't looking great, but we had the mental toughness to
Yeah,
kind of stick with it, and we saw that early in those 2 games early in the year. So that's kind
yeah,
of what the coaches I think are looking for early in the year,
yeah.
especially.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think from the player's perspective, it's definitely the hardest part of the season, just because you're coming in, everyone's still trying to figure out the roles. Are you this type of player? Are you gonna be this type of player? And it's hard. I think depending on like how the team is and the makeup and stuff like that, it's a little easier sometimes. But personally, um, I'll go except for my junior year. Obviously, my first time actually playing, it's my real time getting minutes, and I was like the backup point guard, but then also I was playing the two, and I was just in a different position. So it was a little bit hard for me because I was trying to figure out like how should I be playing for this team? How could I be the best for this team? So early on, it's just is finding your role, but I think with that is you gotta just play confident. Like there's gonna be times you're gonna make mistakes early in the season. Stuff's not gonna be perfect. Stuff's not gonna be great, but just play with that confidence every single game that starts out because that's gonna last for the whole season. And then once those first few games go by, stuff starts kind of feeling more natural. You start finding your role and stuff like that. So. Yeah, it's definitely the hardest part, but I think a little bit of advice for players that are just starting out is like if you don't start the ball, if you don't start the season shooting well, don't let that affect your confidence. Don't let that affect your mental state because the season is long. The season is like we know is super long. Practice every day, games every other day. So you have to keep your mental state and be like, okay, I'm not falling. Let's back to the drawing boards. What do I have to do to fix this? And sometimes you see players they don't start off well and it kind of just lasts throughout the year, and it's
Right,
easy to do
right.
that.
It's a mental funk, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to do that. It's not. It's hard to kind of get out of that. So, just try to. That for me was just try to stay confident as much as I could, and kind of stick through it, whether it was good or bad. Every single game, however it went, break it down, think about it, but like the next day we're moving on. So, definitely, definitely a hard time. It's for a lot of team players, but it's good that everyone gets that
And
fresh
I,
win.
yeah, and I think a lot of players equate, like, especially playing for a role, and you could, early in the season, you could probably attest to this is, okay, am I shooting well? That's the number one indicator of whether I'm playing well, quote unquote. But a lot of the times the coaches, if you're taking good shots, they're pretty happy with that. But what they're really looking for is, okay, how many rebounds? Is this kid turning the ball over every other possession? On defense, is he getting back cut, right? All these things are a lot more important than people realize than, okay, I went 2 for 4 from three. That's great, but 3-point percentage is, we kind of know in college, especially, there's a huge variance game to game. Whereas if you're getting 10 rebounds a game, the next game you're getting most likely 8 to 10 rebounds or even more. So I just think there's a lot more to basketball than people realize, especially with guys trying to fight for a role. Especially they look to, okay, am I scoring? Reality is, if you're fighting for a role, you're not looked upon to really score. It's to play within the team system and do what the coach is looking for. So I agree with all your points there.
No, it's definitely for both coaches and players. It's definitely just a figuring out time for
Yeah.
everybody. But it's great. It's great. Another
But
great episode down.
yeah.
Um, this one's a little bit different. We got more into the advice of what a coach's or a player's perspective is. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for this one to come out. Appreciate you guys' support on the YouTube side of things, and yeah, we'll be back. Make sure to catch our other segment where we give our picks. I didn't do that well last week, but we'll get into that the whole other thing. But yeah,
Yeah. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe for sure.